Good evening, hello everyone. I hope you're all well. Sorry about the last, I don't know, couple of streams, 2 or 3 streams, 2 streams. Yeah, just like personal stuff going on. But we're back now, we're focused. There's some exciting updates, we've got lots of work to do. Hi George. I'll get my camera set. Hi Eric. Okay. How's everyone been? So, where do we start? The really exciting thing is the studio, at least my side of the studio, is I think going to be ready sooner than we thought. The main priority is to get that done as soon as possible. So whilst I'm printing now over the next couple of weeks, I'm going to be sort of doing double shifts and getting it at least to a point where I can move some of my stuff in and start working. The next hurdle is then to we do well. We're on the launch pad at the moment, John. The only thing I want to really like nail and get down is we're not going to have electrical Wi-Fi in there for a little bit, but that's fine because I can run a long extension lead out for my lights and stuff. So what I probably will do is I'm going to sign up and get some sort of like portable Wi-Fi device, like any of you guys that have been to Japan will know you can get from the airports. Those little like USB dongle things, and at the very least we will be able to stream something from there, whether it's the exact quality that we've got now or not, I don't know, but we'll test that, and I'll make sure that we get it working in some capacity. But I'm hoping in the next few weeks that we can at least show you guys round. If it really comes to it and the Wi-Fi stuff doesn't work, then I can maybe leave this carving bench up here or something, I don't know. But the exciting thing is it's happening. Good evening, Nigel. How are you? Oh, I lose my spot. Where are we? But the first port of call is to get all the insulation and stuff done on my side. Get the sizing station all in and get that bit done. Then I can get the carving and printing bench down. And the units and cupboards and storage and stuff will just be done in and around other work and stuff. They're important, but they're not the... I don't need them there to be able to start working in the place. But yeah, so that's it. Hopefully, when we've got it lined out and stuff, I might even, yeah, Saturday evening. I'll see if I can. I tried last week and it didn't work, but I'll see if I can get my phone working, and I'll just stream just a short few minutes just to show you guys around and give a bit of an explanation as to where everything's going to go, and I'll rig some lights up and stuff in there. But the good thing is the work schedule is going to calm down slightly over the next couple of weeks. Get this next little block out the way, and then we can start really throwing ourselves into this. But if any of you guys got any questions, anything specific over about what I'm currently doing or the studio, etc., then do ask away. I've actually had to rig up a temporary sizing section in there at the moment. It's pretty much two washing lines like strung up across the width of the building. Yeah, so yeah, I have thought about doing. I I wouldn't want to do the match labels, but if any of you guys have ever heard of Sen Shafter, if I'm probably butchering the pronunciation, but the small they sort of look like bookmarks, the prints, and they're generally, well, they were, I think historically they were placed up or like tied up on the sides of a shrine or stuff like that. And I have contemplated adapting some prints to that, or doing a longer, thinner format. I don't know if it's something. Maybe I would do it for Patreon wise, because we could do some cool stuff and maybe real. Excuse me. We can maybe push them out quite quickly. I think though, ideally, if I were to ever take on a project like that, it would be, I'd do it in such a way that I could look to train someone on the printing side. That is my goal, to have people to train and to sort of work under me, and that would be a good project and a good way to do that. There's a website called, I think it's just called miniaturejapaneseprints.com or something, or miniaturejapanesewoodblockprints.com, and they have tons and tons and tons of examples. Loads of examples on there. Eric, no, I don't really put any binders. The only time I've ever done that is I made a purple pigment. It's like a purple type magenta colour, and in the process of making the pigment I added soda ash to it to take it from what's called a lake pigment, which is a very translucent style of pigment that you'd see in old manuscripts and like Persian miniatures and things like that. Other than that, it's just the nori. Sometimes there is. So here's a trick with the nori, with the black ink. If you're looking to make a grey and you're struggling, essentially the only way you can make grey is by watering down your sumi. Sorry if you're not using nori. If you're using sumi, the only way to make grey is to water it down. By watering it down, you're obviously bringing in the factor of, you're bringing in the risk of printing mottled, because you're using a very watery pigment. So a small, very small amount of gum arabic added into that grey, that watered down grey colour, can help to mitigate some of that. It thickens the pigment up. Obviously, if you use too much, then you're going to get very thick glue type substance that won't print well. But gum arabic is something that is used. It's not spoken about very much because it's sort of cheating, but I don't currently, because I'm inside the house, so it's always quite stable. Once I'm out inside the studio outdoors, especially the mornings and evenings, it's going to be quite cold in there. It's going to be a lot more akin to, say, Dave's workshop in the temperature. It's all insulated and stuff, but it's not going to be a a heated structure like a house is. So I will be getting a heat mat to keep the paper warm. I have noticed as the temperature has dropped, particularly this year, that you have to work slightly faster. And I have, up until this point, I haven't been sizing very large batches. I haven't had the space. It's only that little section that I've got up there. But with the new system, I'm going to need something to keep the paper warm, especially if I'm doing 60 prints worth or 80 prints worth of paper. I don't want those bottom sheets from getting too cold and drying out. No, I don't grind the Sumi ink. No, I don't buy it in sticks. I get 2 seconds, I'll grab it. So I use this Yasutomo brand. It's just like dirt cheap. Get it from Amazon. It's really sticky. You'd be surprised. So Erica, when you're using the Sumi, are you adding water to it before you start printing with it? George, that's actually a really good idea. That's a really good idea. That's something we can definitely look into, George. Maybe do a semi-regular, just sort of chat round the table type thing. Especially when we've got that. Once I'm in that studio, that's something we can do really easily a couple of times. Especially whilst I'm figuring out the whole internet thing, that we could just sort of sit around and do a chat once every few weeks, and can just like throw questions at me and catch up, and we can all put some names to the faces. And if we're doing something like that, I'd probably open that up to all levels of Patreon as well, not just the highest tier. Because there's a few people that donate sort of like $4, $2, $4, $8. So that'd be a great idea. So here's an. So you speaking about the Sumi, George. I basically just let my Sumi go dry. I put it in the. I'll grab the pot. Do I have water? So, I just let my Sumi just go like super dry, and it just goes like thick. And then I just add like a small amount of water at a time, because it's like essentially glue. Sumi, it like, so you get it all into these like chunks, and then just every few minutes add a little touch more water and just keep working it down with the brush, and you just see it like turning into when it turns back into a paste, And you see my brush is like dry and like caked in it. But you just turn it back into a paste, and then whatever your desired amount is, with the black, a little bit goes a long way. Generally, I'll water the sumi down very slightly to make it workable, and then whilst I'm printing, I'll add water to the block. So say I'm printing this block here. I place my sumi in a place. You don't want to keep placing it on top of the area where you're going to be printing. It can like sometimes, especially in a larger flat area, can then give the impression of like oil stains or something. It like starts to seep through, because you never want to print in like pitch black. It's always more of a dark grey. So say these would be the two spots here and here that I would identify as placing my pigment. I would then be looking to place my paste a few dots in and around here, and I might just do a really quick swipe with my water brush across there, and then that's allowing that thick. It's when it's mixed up and added with water and stuff, it's called bokaju, and it creates that nice smooth flowing pigment, and it's much easier to handle, and it's much easier to spot the consistency than just mixing it in a bowl or a pigment tray. Even if you're adding quite a lot of water, it still looks very black and very dark, and it can be hard to tell. Yeah, I'll look into that, George. That's a great idea. Maybe that's something we can do around the first week of each month, somewhere in and around the time when the Patreon pledges and stuff go out, and we can do like a little like thank you stream and a catch up, and that would be a really good idea. Ideally, I'd like to meet all you guys in person, but the world, at least around these parts, is not quite open yet. But the US is fairly close to the top of my list once we're allowed to travel a little bit more. It's a bit safer to do so. Oh, Eric, I forgot to ask, weren't you, if I remember correctly, you were taking on some sort of epic undertaking of a print, weren't you? If I am remembering correctly, how is that going? If I'm not remembering correctly, then I do apologise. one good thing about carving old reproductions is that because it's already been carved before, there's very specific patterns that you use to carve things. So, for example, if we look at these shapes, the trees, the tops of the trees, and also down here in the rocks, there's actually not a great deal of things on an old Edo style print that require very tight like inside curves. And an inside curve is the point where you're most likely to snap your blade, and it's also rather time consuming, especially for someone like me that's not traditionally trained. So I turn the block a lot when carving. It takes a lot longer to carve a block when you're turning and stuff, and especially doing a lot of circular forms. You'll notice on quite a few of Jed's prints that there's quite a few inward, like inside circle shapes. One, it's because that's brushed work, so it's new, like fresh work. This having already been carved, and I've just traced over the carved lines, makes it easier because there's no like interpretation on my end. But also the older style of carving is a little bit more blocky, and everything is sort of done in a very specific manner. So if I use the trees again, for example, I will just carve to the highest point of each little peak in a straight line, clear that away, and then just come back in and just knock out each triangular shape. Again, if these were more isolated, so down here, I'll just carve looping circles as if they're circles, and then just go in and just chop those shapes out. It makes the carving job substantially easier. Oh, I see. I understand. I hate to be sort of Captain Hindsight. Would it not have been picking up ink? So that is easily solvable if you have very large areas between colours. So you got your colour planes as islands, and the areas in between are oceans. If we use this block again for just an example, say this is a whole section that I want to be blue, and then there's another section down here that's all the way down here that's the same blue. Okay, a general rule of thumb is any singular shape you carve three fingers width out from the island shape, and that's how far you should be able to carve away and print without hitting anything. But if you have two areas that meet up exactly like that, then what you can do is you can leave a very short ridge of wood that is still carved out, but it's lower than the rest, and be careful not to brush the pigment onto it, and then your paper, when it sags down, it'll rest upon that. Or another alternative is to roll up a piece of like kitchen roll, like kitchen paper, or a small piece of cloth, and just lay it down into there, and make sure to not hit it with the Baron. 90% of the time, it's having not carved deep enough. Sorry. I haven't seen the block, so it's quite hard to like make a judgment on it, or not. Well, yeah, make a judgment on it. But also, it's just practice and experience with the Baron to sort of know where the edges of your Baron are. I would always say conducting a few test prints is just as important to getting the blocks lined up and making sure all your colours are correct and stuff than it is to just learn the block. The key block's fairly easy to learn because you spend a lot more time with it, and so you remember, I need to vary my pressure on the bottom left hand side, and I need to push a little bit harder in the middle, or what have you. But the colour blocks, you sort of move through them, they're sort of just random shapes, so it's like it sort of doesn't register in your brain as much. So pulling a few test prints and just sort of learning how far you can push the edge of the Baron over, and learning where your pressure point is with the Baron. I don't know if you remember from the last stream I did where I spoke about holding the position of holding the Baron. If you weren't in the stream or anything, I can give a brief explanation to that again. I feel it's quite important to know. But it does just happen. It just a small. I do it all the time. This is why when I make a batch of 50 prints, I put 60 or sometimes 63 in the stack, because you have to account for a certain amount of wastage. There is wastage in every batch of print. Also, if your paper is maybe too damp, it will sag more and will be more likely to pick up pigment. Dave has a good analogy with this, that we always talk about damping the paper or making the paper wet, and it's not that. It's printable paper should sort of feel like you've just taken your towel out of the tumble dryer. It should feel soft and fluffy, and it shouldn't feel cold to the touch. If your paper is, that's the easiest way of knowing how printable your paper is, or what state it's in, is if it feels cold to the touch, then there's too much moisture within the paper. Oh, sorry, I missed your comment. Paper doesn't want to pick up the paint. Not absorbing it. Silly question. Okay, when you're looking at your piece of paper, Eric, you should see one side of the paper should feel smooth, and one side should look smooth, look flat. The other side should have a lot more of a texture on it. Are you printing on the more fluffy textured side or the flatter side. Have I got a random sheet lying around? I do. So, if we look at this piece of paper, see, look, I got ink splots as well, Eric. So if we look at this piece of paper here, we go, so we can see that it really is quite flat. You can see the texture of the paper, but you can see it's really smooth, really flat. If I turn the paper over, you can see here it's a lot more textured, a lot more fluffy. You always want to be printing on the flatter, less textured side of the paper. A way to tell if your paper is too heavily sized is if you, in the daytime, you hold it horizontally up to a window, and if it sort of, if it sort of shimmers, if you can sort of see very slight, sort of like sparkles almost in the paper, then it's most definitely sized too heavily. Conversely, if you paper that's sized too heavily will not want to pick pigment up very well, and it will look mottled in a dry sort of way, if that makes sense. Paper is much easier to tell if paper is undersized, because when you dampen it and you try and print on the back, the back side will pill up like this. It will start to roll away if the sizing's too weak, and you will most definitely see in the key block that your blacks are bleeding. So when you print a big flat background colour up against the side of a key line, that key line will start to become fuzzy. Is there any place on this print that is doing that? So, I'm not like professing to be great at sizing paper, but the lines are pretty crisp, and this is a very wet background block, but we have pretty nice crisp lines sitting up against the edge, which indicates that the sizing in the paper is pretty good, is strong but not too strong, because the colour's going down nice and uniform and smoothly. Conversely, if I grab the other test print, we have an opposing example. So you can see here my sizing was too weak, and if we look at the hand, just in and around here, in this section, you can see there's very slight bleeding of the black, and that is because there's a lot of very wet, large printed areas going right up against these thin lines, and the sizing is a little bit too weak. Again, you can have that, and you can see the same down in here. Thick. Is it made with pulp? Do you know if it's made with pulp or is it Kozo fibre? because you can print, you can make nice prints on pulpy paper. It does just depend on the sizing. You can calendar your paper if it's very thick and pulpy, and you can mitigate some of that. If I would maybe suggest, I've never used it myself. I'm planning on getting some for another project, and I know it's been printed on in the past, is Toronoko paper. That is also a percentage of that is pulp, but it's a much smaller percentage and a very high quality paper. It's quite easily accessible, I think, as well. I've never used paper from Maclean's. Do you know the name of the paper that you're using? Awagami papers are good. The Shiramines, I know a lot of people that use that, and they say it's very good. And Awagami aren't too expensive either. They've got a lot of good English speaking staff as well, so they can assist you really well. When we get into printing on this design here, there's a lot of stuff that I'm going to be able to show you. Matte side down, shiny side up. Do you mean shiny side as in like the smoothest side? Because it's quite possible if you're putting the matte side down that you might, if I'm thinking, if I'm not wrong in my thinking, then you could be printing on the back side of the paper, which isn't necessarily an issue. It can be done. It does just make it slightly harder. One day I will be able to go to Japan and meet with the paper makers and figure all this out, figure out a way to get that super high quality paper out into the world so that everyone has a chance of using it. Whether I just got to do it on Shin Toronoko. Okay. Well, I do apologise. I've been like putting my head in front of the camera the whole time. I hope I haven't been putting my head in front of the camera the entire time. I would suggest try printing a few different ways and see if that makes any change. Try just calendaring the paper slightly beforehand and varying the amount of moisture and stuff that you're putting onto the block, and see if that changes anything. And if nothing else is working, I would maybe suggest I would suggest speaking to Awagami maybe. I don't know if George has too much experience with paper from Maclean's. Whether George is able to provide any more assistance. So Shin Toronoko. I don't know if I've never heard of Toronoko being made with linen. It does have pulp, a lot less pulp than you would think. Toronoko is generally used in the Fusuma doors, so the sliding doors and stuff you see, when they don't use shoji, when they need a thicker paper, or if they're pasting to walls or things like that, then Toronoko is generally favoured, because it's very hard wearing, so it can be printed upon. But I haven't heard of Toronoko ever having linen in it. Okay, I see. Yeah. I will DM me after the stream, Eric, because there's an excerpt from a book that I have saved on my phone that Dave translated up on his website, and it gives a long list of types of paper that were used by the Yoshidas. I don't know if anyone has a link to the I don't think you're not bad, George. You're a very competent printmaker. If anyone does have the link to the Yoshida book that Dave has translated on woodblock.com, I can maybe. I'll try and find it now. Woodblock.com. Encyclopedia. Library. Contents. So I'm just going to post a link to the contents because it's like too much to look through right now. But that is the Yoshida book, and that like details it goes into a lot of detail to explain the types of paper that were used at the time, because these guys were making Shinhanga. They didn't necessarily, by and large, they conformed to the the old standards and materials and stuff. But they're Yoshida in excuse me, in that book outlines a lot of other types of paper and types of pigment and stuff. And I, aside from watching Dave's streams and videos and stuff, that one book there has taught me most. No, I was going to go. I had plans to go. Well, it would have been last year, but that all got shut down. I think it's being held online though, isn't it though? But Eric, I would advise you. I would advise all of you if you're interested. Dave there's an ebook version available on there as well. I can't remember if it costs anything but there's a lot to learn from that book. Where are we? So we're on the hour now. I'm just going to get around this this little leaf and we'll call it for the day. No problem. It's like, yeah, I couldn't recommend that book enough. I have it printed off in a in a binder, and it's just one of those books that there's always something else you can find or learn from it. Cool. There we go. Right. Slow progress, but it's still progress. Thanks again for bearing with me, everyone. Streams will be a lot more regular now, and we can look forward. Yeah, it's George. Yeah, you're not wrong. It's like, yeah. If there's one book you ever need on the subject, it's that Yoshida book. Yeah, so I will be back on Tuesday, same time, and we will persevere on with this block. We'll start coming down in these flowers and stuff here. But thanks for bearing with me, guys. Thanks for turning up today. It's been a bit irregular and stuff over the last few weeks, but anyway, everyone have a great weekend and stay safe, and I will see you all on Tuesday. Take care.